late night. Now, this is the way it goes. So let's look at some numbers here. Real quick here, let's refresh this and see where we're going. Oh, it's doing weird stuff. Okay, why is it doing that? Let's check this again. It's doing weird stuff. Okay, so what do we got here? We got, okay, we got a whole lot of weird stuff happening. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at this, and we're going to run forward. This is the Secretary of State. Let's look at the Attorney General numbers. Okay, there's the population. See those? You see that big, huge range of numbers? Yeah, there it is right there. Okay, let's go back. Let's look at the Secretary of State again. Okay, big, huge ratio once again. This is massive. These numbers are massive, okay? So, we've got some other factors here. We got the governor's race. Let's look at the governor's race, see how that looks. Hey, let's go ahead and pop down all the other candidates. Because Chad's here. Chad's got 10 points. He's a rock. Look at this. He's got 10 points. He's at 10.3. He was down to 10.2. Slightly coming up. Now, see, he's kind of a rock. There's kind of this factor of no matter what time of day the votes come in or where they come from, he just seems to be just clicking right in there. I mean, he was up to like 14 points starting out to begin with, a little over 14, I think, and then began dropping down, but he holds solid. So the reality here is what do we got? We got Chad's 10 points going to merge up here with Steve Hilton's 24.9. What's that? That's 35 points, people. It comes out to 35.1 points. Okay, and the balance of all these other players. Okay, because what do we got? Xavier. Yeah, we got Xavier and Tom. Xavier 28. We got Tom. Tom's at 22. Okay, what we got right there is between those two is going to be 50%. Easy. Okay, so where does this go? It's actually almost 51%. So after this, it's like you got Katie Porter, you got Matt, you got Antonio, you got all these people. Look, you even got Swalwell down here. I think Swalwell still got 0.3 or something someplace here. People. These, I want you to think for a moment, okay? Here's the deal. I'm going to be the analyst here, okay? I'm very good at what I'm doing, okay? I can either lie to you or I can tell you the truth. I think you want me to tell you the truth. When I got a 92+% accuracy rate in my predictions, I think you want me to tell you the truth. So stay tuned. Let's go through these numbers and see what we got right here. Because the reality is these other people are married to extremists. Okay, these extremist points from these other people, there's no way that they're going to gravitate over to Hilton. That ain't going to happen. Be realistic. Stare at those numbers, understand why those people voted for these other players. It comes up to 62%. So that means somehow, in order for Steve to win, he's going to have to dislodge a minimum of 16 points. Okay, statistically, over the course of how many elections back, for how many decades? Okay, statistically, the odds are impossible. The word is actually statistically, the most likely term that would be correct here is impossible. Okay, how do we fix this situation? Because I don't want to discourage you. I don't want to discourage you from participating. That's not the right answer, except I want to talk about how you participate and what the right things are to participate in. We need to talk about it. Because the reality is many of you work very hard. You don't have a lot of time to deeply review a lot of information. You probably can't even tell which candidate maximizes your wallet. If you're trying to do a financial report card, I'm top of the list. I'm the guy that basically brings the best overall financial report card for 8 out of 10 voters. Easy, 8 out of 10 voters. Even people that aren't vested citizens, the vested citizen, which is 56%, it varies sometimes, to more. See, a lot of people left the state. It used to be over 60%. But so basically, yeah, I'm going to guarantee that vested citizens, long-term, got lineage goes back 150 years or more, or 75 years or more are included because of the great land acquisitions. The government can't own land. Therefore, this is a crucial understanding. The land belongs to the people. The vested citizens who serve in the military, who have paid with lots of cash for years and years and years, these are the citizens that we have to basically consider to be truly vested colonial constitutional capitalist. These are the people who have stock. These other Johnny come. Does a Johnny come lately have the same amount of stock? Of course not. Of course not. They can't walk up and say, my vote's the same, and if I decide to steal 30% of everything you own, it's all good, right? Wrong. It doesn't work that way. It's not legal. It's not constitutional. But we got people want to do this. Who wants to do this? A bunch of socialist, communist, Marxist. We need to talk about this some more. I'm going to take a short break for a moment. I got to look at some phone messages, and I'll get right back in here. Okay, so for a few moments, I want to talk about various players out there that have the vision, have the dream. At least they seem to have a substantial part of it. Because we got a lot of people out there that their lineage does not go back like I just mentioned. But guess what? They're in group 3. They're people who come into the country, they do things the right way. Or their parents came into the country and did things the right way. I'm very serious. So, we have people here that, you got this guy, he does a program called Real Talk, and this guy's really sharp, very sharp. Let's take a look at him for a moment.
1,160.
1,160 registered voters, 84 beds. Gotcha. Case closed. Except, here's a little detail Nick steps right past. When you're homeless in this country, the government literally tells you to register to vote using a shelter's address. It's the recommended way to do it, because that's how a man with no front door still gets to be an American with a vote. A place like the Midnight Mission feeds thousands of people and houses a few dozen. So of course, more folks use it as a mailbox than sleep in the bunks. That's not a crime scene. That's a mailbox doing the exact job mailbox is supposed to do. Receipt 2, gone. Receipt number 3, and I'll be honest, this one's my personal favorite, the magic number.
Nithya Raman got a net swing of more than 43,000 votes since Tuesday. 43,000, huh? Where have I seen that number before? Probably nothing.
Now, 43,000 votes. 43,000 homeless people in LA. Ooh, spooky. They must be connected. Nope. That is not detective work. That's a horoscope. 2 numbers happened to rhyme, and a grown man decided it was a criminal conspiracy. By that logic, my area code rigged the World Series. Numbers being near each other is not evidence. It's a coincidence wearing a trench coat. Receipt number 3 in the dumpster behind the trash. Receipt number 4, and this is the big one, because this is the one with 1 million views.
We're seeing a massive flood of people pointing out that they have returned a mail-in ballot and voted Spencer Pratt.
Okay, I had to check some phone messages.
But they are checking the status of their ballot only to find out that the ballot is either being stalled and is not being processed, or in many instances, people are reporting that when they went to check their ballot status, they're being told that their ballot was rejected and not counted because their signatures were rejected. Which
people are screenshotting their ballot tracker. It says 1 of 4, ballot outbound. They're convinced California fed their vote into a shredder. So I went to the Secretary of State, the real one, the .gov, and here are the 4 steps, straight off the state's own website. Step 1, outbound. That's when they mail the ballot straight to you. Step 2, inbound. That's when you mail it back. Step 3, received. Step 4, accepted. That's counted. So 1 of 4 outbound does not mean they tossed your vote to the garbage. It means they mailed you a ballot. It was the very first step. It is a system politely telling you the check is in the mail. 5 million Americans looked at the check is in the mail and read they're stealing your democracy. And hey, I almost did that too. That's how good the panic feels. Receipt number 4 does not exist. And that precinct map everybody's drawing red circles on, Pull it up next to itself. Her votes look like about the same whether it came in on election day, in person, or by mail weeks earlier. Now think about that. If somebody were dumping a pile of fake mail ballots out of Skid Row, that mail map would light up a completely different shape than the in-person map. It would scream. It doesn't. It's the same shape. It's her district voting like her district. Receipt 5, nothing either. So there it is. That's your smoking gun. 5 straws, and every single one of them snaps the second you pick it up and squeeze. Now, here's where I lose half of you in the comments, because right about now, you're all typing, so you're telling me it's all fine, Ramin? Nothing's wrong? Go back to sleep. No. So sit back down, because something is very, very wrong. It's just not the cartoon they're selling you.
Where should you invest $100 today?
Very wrong. It's just not the cartoon they're selling you.
One case a month ago of a lady that was registering homeless people to vote and paying them to sign false information on voter registration forms. She's since been charged and pled guilty.
That's the prosecutor. A woman in the state already pleaded guilty in federal court. Sentencing's already on the calendar for August to paying homeless people $2 and $3 a head to register to vote. That is not some anonymous egg account on X. That's an admission under oath. The voter rolls in California are dirty. People are getting paid to stuff them. That part is real.
They almost make it easy, and they lay out the welcome mat for fraudsters. So California, I call it, it's a fraudster's paradise. Here, there's no chain of custody. There's no audit trail.
The prosecutor calls the whole state a fraudster's paradise, and on the system, he's not wrong. But here's the trap, and you got to hear me on this one. A dirty registration is not a stolen vote. Casting a ballot in their name and getting it counted, that's a whole different felony. And nobody, not Nick, not the New York Post, not the feds yet, has shown you the second thing happened in this race. They showed you a messy list. They did not show you a stolen election. And there's a reason they can't show you. Because here's the real con, the big one. They built you a system where you can stare at the dirt in broad daylight and never, ever, ever see the actual ballot.
The way California administers its elections, it breeds distrust. It breeds skepticism, because when you see results one way in election night and then it flips after they count the other ballots, whether it's legitimate or not, people are distrustful of a system like that.
Listen to that again, because it's the most honest sentence anybody said all week. Whether it's legitimate or not, people are distrustful. Whether it's legitimate,
there you go.
The entire game right there. They built a machine so slow, so blind, so impossible for a normal human being to watch that even when it's clean, it looks crooked. And if it's ever dirty, you'd be the last man on earth to ever find out.
We're gonna follow the evidence wherever it goes. We're not gonna preview it. We're not gonna suggest anything particular. Anyone did anything particularly illegal until we have the evidence to make a case in court.
Even the prosecutor won't say it happened. He says, wait for the evidence. And meanwhile, they've got you chasing a Venezuelan voting machine fairy tale.
CanCon brings up a very important point. Smartmatic is used in exactly one location in all of America, and that is LA. And we've talked about this before, but this is the machine component.
The same fairy tale that got a whole network suited to the Stone Age last time, while the real heist is boring and legal and happening right out in the open. And that's not rigged, guys. That is rigged proof. The smoking gun you can take to a courtroom. This, you can't. There's no gun. There's no fingerprints. There's just a slow, gray machine behind a door you're not allowed to stand in front of. And it's the same machine that loses your ballot, jacks your gas, and triples the tax on the house your mom and dad left you. And then looks you dead in the eye and says, no evidence. And that is exactly why I will not sell you tonight what every other channel is selling. The feds are closing in. Trump's got a secret plan. Just wait. Just watch. Smash subscribe and stay tuned for the perp walk at 5 o'clock. I'm not doing it. Because that, my friends, is a countdown to a letdown. 3 weeks from now, when there are no handcuffs, no perp walks, you're going to feel robbed all over again. Except this time, it'll be one of your own guys who picked your pocket, selling you hope on layaway. I'm not going to rent you a feeling. I can't pay back. So here's the truth, and it's a hard one, and I'm going to give it to you straight because you can take it. This LA race, it is over. It's 2 Democrats in November now. Bass versus Rama. There is no white knight riding in. You can't unring this bell. And that right there is the whole lesson. You let it get close, and the second you let it get close, that slow gray machine gets to decide it for you behind the door while you sleep. And there is not one thing you can do about it after the fact. You can't audit your way out of close. You can't sue your way out of the close. You can't tweet your way out of the close. There is exactly one thing that has ever beaten a machine like this one. You don't out-argue it. You don't out-lawyer it. You bury it. You run the number up so high, in November statewide, every race still on that board, the governor on down, that no slow count, no phantom shelter with no beds, no midnight ballot drop can lay a finger on it. You make it not close, because the one thing they cannot fake, the one thing that is not registered to a drop-in center in Venice, the one thing the gray machine has no answer for on God's green earth is a turnout they never saw coming. All this counting nonsense, that was batting practice. November, that's the World Series. So do me a favor, stop forwarding the smoking gun. There isn't one. Go find 5 people who sat the last one out, and you make sure they don't sit this next one out. That's the only audit that has ever worked in the history of this country. I'm Ramin. This is Real Talk. I know you're going to hit me in the comments. Hit me, and then go talk to somebody who wasn't in the comments.
Not sure if you saw the news, but Fox News is claiming President Trump is declining in the polls. President Trump...
Okay, that's very interesting. Now, I'm going to start off with telling you that I don't want to discourage you from getting out there and finding as many people as you possibly can to register to vote and to get involved and to explain as hard as you can what the issues are, who the players are, and what's actually going on. However, he's right about most things, but he's missing a few items. Now, I'm a bit better analyst than he is, but I showed you him because if you go look at all the stuff this guy has, you're going to find something out real quick. This guy's really, really sharp, okay? He's going to show you things, and he's right about them. If he shows you stuff and it doesn't click, I'm telling you that 80% of the time what this guy shows you should immediately click in your head. This guy is really, really good. Now, I can talk about a few areas only because I've done more research, only because I've been involved in the game longer than he has, only because I'm an extreme tactical table expert. I know certain things. Now, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this. I hope you have some more time because I've been laying out a lot of stuff and people haven't been following along. They work too much. They have kids. They don't have enough time to understand what's actually going on. So let's get into this a little bit more. So if we're looking at numbers right here, what we got to look at here is, to understand this, the LA mayoral race. Okay, now look at the numbers. What do you see on the numbers? Okay, now this girl is an anomaly. Why is she an anomaly? Why does she just go from 19 points up to boom 29 points? How does she gain 10 full points, leaving everybody kind of sort of standing still? Let me explain this. Okay, if you remember, Ramin showed you demographic maps, snapshots of how the votes are coming in at different times. And you'll notice that for the most part, those maps were balanced. Those colors were essentially balanced. You didn't see anomalies, okay? Which means the idea that somebody running around doing a bunch of phony ballots would generally show up. And that's almost correct. Okay, I'll tell you something that you may not understand because I have deep understanding about national security and international security and the different type of games that people have played for many, many decades worldwide. Now, there's different ways to do things. See, first of all, what this woman did right here, what she did is she took advantage of a state program that paid for people to knock on doors. So essentially, she used this hiring people because she's getting money from the state. She's working with other shell organizations to muster up more people to go out and door knock. How is this done? They have things, it's very important, that are called walk list, okay? And when you're going out trying to understand getting petition signatures and getting people to vote, there are analytic records respective to who's voted or who's registered versus not registered in demographic maps. Remember, he showed you those 3 snapshots of the demographic maps. So if you're out there being a petitioner and you're a professional, there are different levels where job sources come in and guys are doing analyst work. And they says, okay, we got people, they're in front of these high impact areas, lots and lots of foot traffic. They're at malls, they're at Walmart, they're at all of these grocery stores, they're at Home Depot, they're all over the place. But what's missing is people going out and doing what's known as the walk list. The walk list is going directly to all of the locations and physically verifying whether or not somebody is there. And the sad thing is, many times you'd have to go there a lot because you have no idea what time of day these people are going to be there. You don't know if they work daytime, swing shift, or graveyard. That information's not provided. So you have to maybe go back repeatedly. So you have to think about this as to what time of the day you want to go out and do the walk list. Now, if it's married couples, there's a good chance that one of them is home during the day, at least if they're old school. So where you have, well, people in wealthier homes, you have more mothers that are home, which means if you knock on the door, you have a chance of running into people. So different times of the day. And many times parents are going to be what? One of the parents is going to be available when? When the kids get out of school, which means that between 3 p.m. and 6 or 7 p.m. is an optimum time to catch people at home. That's if they have kids. If they don't have kids, it's a whole different program. So going out and doing these walk lists, the state of California pays big money so that people can be hired to go knocking door to door to get people to register to vote. And the way this is done has people like these top 2 women right here capable of literally tapping into this money. So what do? In effect, you use shell companies and your campaign to effectively find ways to hire people. Why? Because the state's giving you money to pay these people per signature to go door to door. So this is going to have things like paid signature petitions, paid signature registrations. It goes on. But of course, if you want people in some way connected, friendly to your campaign, that's the quasi area. But it can be done. Now, Pratt, once again, let me shake this. Pratt doesn't understand how the system works at the same level. So he's at a disadvantage. Is that actionable? Can you sue over that? Yes, you can. Okay, so the reality is, yeah, there's something unfair going on there. And yeah, Pratt can sue. It's a lot of money. You can get Justice Watch in and all this stuff. You can catch this. But here's the big problem. Look at the points. Look where Pratt's at. Okay, what are the combined points of these other 2 women? Okay, we've got a 34 and a 29. Okay, so this is, 64 points. 64 points. Pratt has 25. okay, which means it's possible to prove that player in the middle here, this woman, kind of twisted things a bit, and the state of California sponsored, well, an unfair practice. Yeah, that's straight out. But what does that get you? That gets you a reset, sort of. But the reality still is what? What is the reality? The reality is we're going to have these overall numbers basically the same. They're not going to change too much. Now, if Pratt was out there, he would have got more votes. He could have got more people, but what would that have got him? Well, that might have actually got him to 29.2, which means he would have had the runner-up number 2 spot. That could have happened. Very easily could have happened. So there's an argument there, except now what? Because if you end up having Pratt, if Pratt was in for the final next stage of the election, there's still this huge problem. The easiest way to look at it is to say, how many numbers are here? We'll combine them. It is 64 points. Okay, that means that Pratt would have to come up with 25 points, basically, 24.8 points or something like that, to end up having the majority vote. Now, statistically, the odds that he would actually be able to close the gap that much in the November election are statistically virtually impossible. They're virtually impossible. So we get to the first thing that I talk about and say, yeah, there is an actionable area. Yeah, there is a form of cheating. Yeah, there was unfair treatment. Okay. But then we get to, okay, fine, he gets placed back into the number 2. And then what happens? The numbers come back to haunt. And how is Pratt going to still end up coming up with another 24.7 or 8 points? That's double. That's a double. That's statistically virtually impossible considering what we're looking at. So what is the problem? Why are all these other voters against Pratt? Is there a problem? Literally, is there a problem? So it's a sanctuary city. Of course it's a problem. Okay, we can look at that. We can discuss that a lot deeper and do the analytics on it. So let me pause. I got a couple messages I have to look at. Let me pause for a moment. I'll come right back. Okay, I'm back here. Check my message. Now, we just went over these statistics. I think you can see what I'm talking about. You can see the big math. You're making notes. You can see these huge spread differentials that have to be dealt with. Okay, in order to get a better idea, let's continue here. Let me show you this real quick. Look at the spread pattern of understanding what's going on in the Secretary of State primary. Look at the huge difference between Wagner versus Weber. 58 versus 37. So how many points is Wagner going to have to gain to basically be able to overtake? That's all the points right there, people. That's all the points. Add them up. That's the whole point spread right there. Okay, what does this mean? Pratt, to get to 51%, would have to get basically 13 point something percent. You might as well call it 14%. So he would have to figure out how to get, let's say that this Feinstein, right, would give their 2.4. Okay, 2.4 from 14 leaves what? 11.6. That means he would have to figure out how to get 11.6% wedged away from Weber. Think about this. You can look at the history of elections for the past 75 years in California and answer the question statistically, what is the likelihood of that occurring? These are the numbers. We're doing the analytics. Now, again, I don't want to discourage you from getting involved. Is there a way to win all this? Actually, there is. There is, and I'm going to cover that. But now, and what I'm going to show you is way different. People go, there's no smoking gun. Actually, there are smoking guns, but you have to understand what the smoking guns are. They're kind of confusing. I'm going to get to those. Let's continue for a few moments. Let's look here. This is the Attorney General's numbers. Is this the same pattern? Attorney General, you have Bonta versus Gates. It's a similar situation, which means basically, this Marjorie Mickles, who is she? What's the chance that Gates can end up getting her 5.4 votes? If he did, you have to analyze that. Okay, if he did, then that would put him at 43.6. If he got to 43.6, then he'd only need 8 more points. He'd have to wedge 8 points out of Bonta's people. Okay, so again, but are we seeing a similar trend here? Yeah, actually we are. We're going to talk about what these trends are and why they are. And we're also going to talk about how different people are not going to basically change over and jump right over. We're going to talk about how difficult it is to pry those extra votes out. We're going to have to talk about the realities of who people are, what they're involved in. And we have to talk about things like dangers to national security, crimes that various people are involving themselves. We have to discuss this. So I need a minute. I got to check messages. Just a moment. Okay, I'm back. So let's bring this full circle. There's other elections that can be looked at, different areas. Let's look at the governor's race. Now, once again, what do we got here? Let's look at the whole field of people. What have we got here on these numbers? Are we, the similar factors? It's a bit more complicated. There's a lot more players. There's over 300 candidates. I could explain a lot about that later on. Now, but we have to understand. So if you add Chad's 10.3 to Steve's 24.9, okay, you end up with 35.2. 35.2. It still comes around to all of a sudden, in order for Hilton to win, he's going to have to get 16 points. Okay? We lightly talked about this. Now, Matt, let's go down here and start looking at these different players and see what we actually have here, because there's a lot of different players in this that could be possibly important. As we're going down looking at these numbers, and there are votes, different people doing different stuff. There's certain numbers, certain people, except we're looking at a bunch of different stuff that is not exactly bringing forth an understanding of what we really want to look at and understand. It's really a big one. Now, for instance, we have Eric Swalwell here. Swalwell, he bailed out, right? He bailed out way ahead of time, but he's still on the ballot. So this 0.3% of the vote, 0.3%, who are those people voting for Swalwell? Would those be people that really, really like Swalwell? That's their message. They're saying, no, I don't care. I like Swalwell. No matter what. I mean, think about that. No matter what, they're looking at all these numbers. They don't care what all the tendencies are, what the polls are saying. They're just going to bow their neck, and they're going to dedicate it to Swalwell. Okay? Who are these people? More importantly, if these people decide to vote again in November, who are they going to vote for? I put this to you. Would Swalwell people decide to vote for Steve Hilton? I don't think so. I would say that there's a 99.987 chance that would basically say there's no way that 0.3% of people that were voting for Eric Swalwell, That's 27,357 people. There's no way those people are going to ever vote for Hilton. Does this click in your head? Are we tracking with, yeah, that makes sense. It's important. Okay, so we also have people like Betty Yee, 0.4%. We've got Tony over here, 0.7%. We've got Antonio, he's got 1.1. We've got Matt Mayhem. Now, Matt Mahan, again, go research him if you need to. His 3.6% of people, are they going to vote for Steve Hilton? We're looking at a virtually identical statistic to the one I just laid out. That's basically statistically, no, that ain't going to happen. They're not going to vote for Steve. They would vote for anybody else, just about, But we know where the vote's going to go. They'd go to Xavier. Okay. So who else have we got? We got Katie Porter, 4.3% of the votes. Again, you can look at the records, see what these people are saying about issues, and put the logic down here. Are Katie Porter people that remain, that voted, that were dedicated, saying, no, we're voting for Katie no matter what? Are those people going to vote for Steve Hilton? No, they're not going to vote for Steve. They're going to vote for Xavier. Go ahead and research it yourself. I'm telling you. Okay, so who else have we got here? We've got, there's some other small points in there. You could figure that out yourself there. We got Chad. Well, Chad's people, we already did that. They're going to, more than likely, they'll jump over and say, okay, we can vote for Hilton, but that gets us to that 35%. Tom. You got Tom here. This guy spends a couple $100 million and doesn't really get much of a bang for the buck if you think about it. Where are his votes going to go to? Are his people going to gravitate over to Steve Hilton? Most people would say, no, that ain't going to happen. His 22% is going to go over to Xavier. He was appointed once before to a Democratic administration. Questions about that. We can talk about those questions later. So you could say, well, maybe a percentage. Okay, fine. Let's be honest. What percentage of those 22 points that Tom got, that he spent $200 million plus getting, are going to say, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and vote for Steve? These people are fanatics. They're dedicated. Okay? Out of the 22, could 5 points come off of that? 5 points. You could go do the analyst yourself, and I'm telling you, could half of those, 11 points. Go do the analytics on this of the psychology of these various people and ask yourself what the odds are of votes gravitating over to Steve. For the most part, it ain't going to happen. Steve can get the 10 that went for Chad, but he can't get the other 16 points. The other 14, 16 points that would be needed to get to 51%. Ain't going to happen. It's basically statistically impossible. So as we look at this stuff here, we see basically the same ratio factors occurring again and again. No surprise here, okay? All this stuff is occurring again and again. Okay, so where do we go from here? I told you that there are ways to win. And I told you I don't want to discourage you for one moment about going out and talking to people and getting more votes. Let's talk about how to get to the win. Why? I know how to get to the win. Why? Well, let's see how your attitude changes in the next few minutes. Okay, so we jump over here to gubernatorial candidate Michael Crosby. Hi, how you doing? All right, down here we got 410 views. Just put that up not too long ago. What does it say?
I am the I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution. How much money did ACT accept from Russia? On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment.
Okay, you should have heard that, we have members of Congress questioning the CEO of Act Blue, the massive fundraising machine, the largest one, that does Democratic fundraising. They do other people's too, but it's almost exclusively Democratic or liberal. And the question obviously was, how much money did you accept from Russia? And she takes the fifth and says, I don't want it. I'm taking the fifth. Okay, what else have we got here? Now, people, I want you to pay attention. Please, I'm asking you to pay attention because I'm showing you something. It's crucially important.
Pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights, pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution. How many more contributions did ACT accept? On the advice of counsel.
How many contributions? How many foreign contributions?
Under the Constitution. How much money did ACT accept from Russia? On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution. Why did your entire legal team quit? Your in-house legal team.
Why did her entire legal team quit?
I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution. Did your legal team quit because of reduced raw standards?
Okay, she keeps basically doing the same
On
thing.
the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights.
Asserting your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination today.
To answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Ms. Walsh-Jones, I want to make clear for the hearing record, you've been asked legitimate questions that are intended to elicit information the committee has the right to have to aid our inquiry. You've refused to answer the questions. Are you formally asserting your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
For the record, I think it's important to know that we invited you to come here today to testify. Originally, you were coming voluntarily. On Monday, your attorneys reached out to this committee and requested a subpoena for you to testify. We provided you that subpoena. You're here today with an opportunity to testify, and you've chosen to take your Fifth Amendment constitutional right. I now recognize the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garcia, in his opening statement, said we're here because Republicans are playing politics. Let's be clear. We're here because ACT Blue's legal counsel said Ms. Wallace-Jones lied to Congress. Willfully and knowingly misled the Congress of the United States. That's why we're here. Oh, by the way, who was the legal counsel, Covington Burley? Who was her counsel? Dana Remus, not some Republican. She was former White House counsel for Joe Biden. That's who said that. That's why we're here. So I just have a couple questions for you, Ms. Wallace-Jones. Just a couple. Your board chairman said ACT Blue accepted 38 million contributions in 2024 that had the signs of foreign origin. How much fraud is too much fraud?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
How many foreign contributions did ACT Blue accept?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
How much money did ACT Blue accept from Russia?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Why did your entire legal team quit? Your in-house legal team.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
How much money did Act Blue accept from Russia?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline. Pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights.
Why did your entire legal team quit?
Today, we're tackling one of the most expensive mistakes I see AI engineers make. You have an idea for...
But I want to make sure I'm respectful. Is it Miss Jones or Miss Wallace Jones?
Before writing a single line.
I do have a series of questions for you. But I want to make sure I'm respectful. Is it Miss Jones or Miss Wallace Jones?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Okay, wow. Okay, didn't expect that one. As our witness today, we have Ms. Regina Wallace-Jones, the CEO of Act Blue. Ms. Wallace-Jones, will you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness answered affirmative. You may be seated. I'll begin our questions today, followed by the ranking member. Foreign funds have no place in American political campaigns. American elections are for American citizens only. Ms. Wallace-Jones, in 2023, I sent you this letter with 5 straightforward questions with a goal of confirming that foreign funds are not in our elections and that Act Blue had adequate fraud prevention measures in place. You replied a month later with a 4-page letter describing your fraud prevention policies and procedures that you had in place at Act Blue. But according to the New York Times, your response to this committee may have been false and misleading. Ms. Wallace-Jones, when you signed this letter to me, did you believe that this letter was false and misleading?
On the advice of my counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Ms. Wallace-Jones, before you sent this letter, did you believe, was it brought to your attention that this letter that you sent me was false and misleading?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Well, I think it's important for everybody here to know that according to the New York Times, you've been aware for quite a while that the response you made was likely false or misleading. Did you ever...
And start by...
A series of questions for you. But I want to make sure...
About our country and what's happening inside our country.
Pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights.
Which includes expanding the Supreme Court. We invite a conversation about multi-members districts. We talk about, that if we win the Senate, which we should and we will, then the Senate Judiciary Committee should have rules that they put in place so when these people come before as nominees to the Supreme Court and lie, that they are held to account and consequence. Not just that somebody goes on cable news and says they lied, but that there are rules in place to actually penalize people for lying to a Senate Judiciary Committee.
this letter to me, did you believe that this letter was false and misleading?
On the advice of my counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Ms. Wallace-Jones, before you sent this letter, did you believe, was it brought to your attention that this letter that you sent me was false and misleading?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Well, I think it's important for everybody here to know that according to the New York Times, you've been aware for quite a while that the response you made was likely false or misleading. Did you ever consider correcting the...
It's always worse than we thought. The one thing we get wrong when we start these investigations, when we start this over...
Today, we're tackling one of the most elusive.
in hand?
Rights under the Constitution.
How much money did that really come from Russia?
On the advice of counsel,
It's always worse than we thought. The one thing we get wrong, who's a hate group, scam that they were running. They knew the SPLC was doing this, but they didn't pursue the case. They dropped the case. Because
on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
After you sent me the 2023 letter, Act Blue weakened its fraud prevention rules twice in 2024. Quote, even after internal assessments confirmed that these policy changes would lead to more fraudulent donations, end quote. Did you weaken fraud prevention standards to increase donations on the Act Blue platform?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Ms. Wallace-Jones, I want to make clear for the hearing record, you've been asked legitimate questions that are intended to elicit information the committee has the right to have to aid our inquiry. You've refused to answer the questions. Are you formally asserting your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
For the record, I think it's important to know that we invited you to come here today to testify. Originally, you were coming voluntarily. On Monday, your attorneys reached out to this committee and requested a subpoena for you to testify. We provided you that subpoena. You're here today with an opportunity to testify, and you've chosen to take your Fifth Amendment constitutional right. I now recognize the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan, for 5 minutes.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garcia, in his opening statement, said we're here because Republicans are playing politics. Let's be clear. We're here because Act Blue's legal counsel said Ms. Wallace-Jones lied to Congress, willfully and knowingly misled the Congress of the United States. That's why we're here. Oh, by the way, who was the legal counsel Covington Burley? Who was her counsel? Dana Remus, not some Republican. She was former White House counsel for Joe Biden. That's who said that. That's why we're here. So I just have a couple questions for you, Ms. Wallace-Jones. Just a couple. Your board chairman said Act Blue accepted up to 38 million contributions in 2024 that had the signs of foreign origin. How much fraud is too much fraud?
38 million.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
That's 38 million.
How many contributions did Act Blue accept?
On the
Contributions,
advice of counsel,
not the total
I
amount.
respectfully decline
Those
to
are not
answer the
dollar
question pursuant to my
donations.
Fifth Amendment rights under the
There's a
Constitution.
huge, massive
How
figure.
much money did Act Blue accept from
Massive.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Why did your entire legal team quit? your in-house legal team.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Did your legal team quit because of reduced fraud standards?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Understand. And we won't keep you here all day, but let me just do one more. Did you weaken your fraud standards to help Democrats?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the good work you and your committee are doing. With that, I would yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from North Carolina.
For a long time, there's been a massive wall standing between you and the content you actually want to create. That wall is 3D.
My Democratic colleagues that say they want truth from other fundraising platforms, I want this too. But the fact is, these were egregious practices that were put forth by Act Blue that are well documented. Do you regret any of the things that you said, or any of the things that Act Blue has done in the past in regards to foreign and donations?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
If you had the chance to pick another place to be employed, would you have joined Act Blue?
On the advice of my counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question.
Boy, you seem very
pursuant
happy.
to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
I am amazed at the number of attorneys that are behind you to be able to coach you to say these things. That's quite an expense Act Blue is going to have. It's just a tragedy that we're here today on partisan grounds. We can't get to the truth. This is what the American people have asked Congress to do. They ask us to get to the truth. They don't talk about money to go into Ukraine. They don't talk about Joe Biden wanting to make sure that he gets paid. They just want the truth. And the fact that you guys have literally allowed, continued, and agreed with foreign intervention in our elections just because of monetary consequences, which help certain types of candidates, in my opinion, is horrible, disgusting, egregious, and sadly unpatriotic and un-American. I wish I could ask you more, but I know what the answers are going to be. I pray we get to this. Maybe we'll get to this in a court of law. It seems like that's where things are going these days. So if you got to plead the fifth, that's where I guess we end up. So thank you for coming today. I'll yield back the time.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, is recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Look at all these banking records.
There's serious allegations that have been made against Act Blue.
Took money from Russia, you knew it.
They're exceptional in these allegations, and either they're true or they're not. And this is part of what we're here trying to determine. But what is amazing to me is my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have not addressed one of these allegations. If I was you, I'd be a little offended because not a single one of them has come to your defense. Every one of them have deflected to something else. Let's look a little bit at some of the allegations. The fact, Act Blue, in its own words, decided to take a, quote, more lenient approach to fraud prevention leading up to the 2024 election. But instead of addressing that, Mr. Morelli decides to talk about a Chinese man gambling in a casino. Another fact, Act Blue took action despite detecting at least 22 significant fraud campaigns on its platform in recent years. Instead of addressing that, Mr. Raskin wanted to talk about some Texans buying pajamas. Another, in the wake of the 2024 election, almost the entirety of Act Blue's legal and compliance department was either fired, resigned, or left the company, alleging retaliation for highlighting vulnerabilities and unseriousness in addressing fraudulent donations. Instead of addressing that or clarifying that, Mr. Garcia wanted to talk about the president's slush fund, even though which he left off as President Obama had the same type of fund called the Keeps Eagle Fund. How did that help you in your position here? what that shows me is they're not willing to defend against these allegations because likely they know that they're true. This is called deflection. This is politics at its ugliest and its dirtiest. So I do have a series of questions for you, but I want to make sure I'm respectful. Is it Ms. Jones or Ms. Wallace-Jones?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Okay, wow. Okay, didn't expect that one. But I think I see where this is going. Let me go ahead and ask questions. What role do you play in the process of Act Blue? Well, let me back up. I want to ask these first. Ms. Wallace-Jones, has the FEC ever completed an audit of Act Blue during the 2020 election cycle?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Okay, I just want to bring up, Mr. Chairman, that was a simple yes or no. There's no allegation in that. It was just whether an audit of Act Blue took place in the 2020 election cycle. Does Act Blue have an application programming interface with the FEC database?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Okay. This committee just passed bipartisan legislation that requires donors to include their CVV or CVC when donating to a political campaign online. The committee originally passed the same legislation last Congress and pointed out that Act Blue did not require the CVV for online donations. Soon after that, Act Blue changed its policies to require the CVV. What was that decision connected to what this committee was doing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
All right. What role do you play in the process of Act Blue changing fraud prevention policies, such as requiring a CVV or increasing the thresholds for risk tolerance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, it appears that since I can't even, that her name is protected under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, I don't think my time is going to be more well spent, so I yield back. The gentlewoman from Illinois, Representative Miller, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to take a moment to highlight a section of an Act Blue employee training document, Fraud Prevention 101 for new associates in the workflow. Your company's memo states, and I quote, "If an otherwise legitimate donor uses a fake name, we would want to accept their donation," end quote. Can you confirm whether this is the advice that you give to your employees?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. This committee is engaged in legitimate inquiry of possible serious violations of federal election law. These are issues that are clearly within the jurisdiction of this committee, the Committee on House Administration, and the information we're seeking is important to assist us in our legislative and oversight responsibilities. You've invoked your Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. That is your constitutional right. I'm disappointed to say that it's clear that you're not going to answer the committee's questions today. I can assure everyone, though, that the committee will continue to take every appropriate step to obtain the information that we are seeking. Without objection, the witness is excused.
Congressman Jim Jordan, chair of the House Judiciary Committee, joins us. What does that actually mean when they take the fifth? You don't see that very often in Congress.
No, you don't, but in light of the facts here, what we know, I mean, there are all kinds of suspicious things. The chairman of their board, Greg, said that there was at least $38 million that looked like it had a foreign origin in all the money that they took in. So that's the problem. The real problem, though, with Ms. Wallace-Jones is she said one thing to Congress in responding to questions we had for her when she wrote back to Chairman Stiles. She said one thing to Congress, but her outside legal counsel said, hey, we don't think what you told Congress is entirely accurate. They even use the terms, there may be willfully and knowingly misleading Congress. That's intent. You can't do that. That's called lying, and you can't lie to Congress. So I think that's why she decided, I'm not going to take any risk here. I'm not going to take any chance. I'm going to exercise my Fifth Amendment liberties. And by the way, Greg, our committee had already deposed 5 other members from Act Blue of their fraud prevention team, 3 of their legal counsels, their in-house legal counsels. When we deposed all of them, they all took the Fifth. So now we have 6 people, the top people at Act Blue, who've all taken the Fifth when we've asked them about questions about foreign contributions going through this entity.
So what do you suspect? What's the worst case scenario that, what were they up to? What does your gut tell it? What direction is this thing going?
They were trying to take in as much money as they could. They, as you said, they're the machine behind Democrat politics.
Okay, we're going over a little bit here. I'm going to have to end up going to part 2. I want you to hear a little bit more before we go into part 2. I've posted more than 500 hours of various types of evidence on 9 different either YouTube or social media sites with very serious evidence concerning extreme amounts of violence, violations of national security, burglaries, break-ins. We're talking way, way, way past Watergate. Not a little peek where people wanted to go in and look at a couple of notes. No, it's way beyond that. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, deaths have occurred. Deaths have occurred, and what we're looking at are different types of smoking guns. There is an extreme complexity to understand the material when they say that there was a 2020 evaluation done, an audit. That it should be obvious to you that there's a long-term set of activities that deal with an undetermined mass quantity of cash that came from various places that are foreign, among them Russia.
Fundraising juggernaut. They had, I think, $3.8 billion they raised in the last cycle. So this is huge for the left, huge for the Democrats. And I think they had 3.8 billion reasons, all that money, not to be honest with us when we started digging into it. But I think it's likely they took in foreign money. They lowered their standards. We have emails as part of our investigation where it shows they lowered their fraud prevention standards because they wanted the money coming in and they wanted to get it out to Democrat candidates. So remember, there were some Democrats running for Congress, first-time candidates out in California raising $2 and $3 million every quarter. That's unbelievable amount of money for a congressional candidate, first-time candidate. So, this was a real machine they had operating. I think they think they took in foreign contributions, and they don't want to talk about it.
And what is that's a bad thing. What is the penalty if that turns out to be the case?
Well,
go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's against the law. You can't do that. I mean, think about it. The Democrats, they harped on this forever, but now their big fundraising machine looks like they were doing it. And this is, I always say, this is a tale as old as time. They get caught doing something wrong, or at least what appears to be something wrong. The first thing they do is deny it, which is what Ms. Wallace-Jones did in that letter back to Congress. And then, of course, her legal counsel tried to straighten it. So the first thing they do is deny it. But when the questions persist, they do what they did today. They take the Fifth. All 6 of these people have taken the Fifth. So the Justice Department's looking into them as well. But we have a duty under the Constitution to do our oversight in case we want to change campaign finance laws, rearrange how and fix the law in case we need to do that. So we're going to continue to do our oversight.
It's interesting. Some people said, well, President Trump, just roll the video, if you would, for C06. President Trump deposed, all kinds of court proceedings, and actually, just go ahead, and he answers all the questions. And somebody tried to say, well, he took the Fifth at the trial. I don't think technically that's the Fifth. If you don't testify at a trial, say in that crazy, whatever the hell it was, the Michael Cohen check trial, that's not taking the Fifth. That's just, right?
Right, he just didn't take the stand, for goodness sake. No, that's not the same. And we thought she was going to do this. Originally, she was going to come in and just testify, and then we got word from her counsel that she wanted a subpoena to appear today. So as soon as they asked for a subpoena to bring her in, we suspected she was going to take the fifth, and of course she did. Now remember, her legal counsel, who told her in a memorandum, we don't think you were square with Congress. We think you misled Congress. The person who did that wasn't some Republican. It was Dana Remus, former White House counsel for Joe Biden. So this was a Democrat at the big law firm here in town, Covington Burling, who said, we don't...
Okay, I have to stop this here because we're in an hour and 10 minutes, and there is an editing limit to the way I have to do this. So we're going to have to go to part 2. And this is when more and more evidence starts coming up in different ways that brings a very severe understanding of violence. Again, deaths have occurred. People have been injured.